Dumbo, John de Shimon, Jumbo, Yondobo, Sobezon, Ribo, Don, Josu, Demo, de Washibon, Jude, Chimbo, Jubun, Kalo, Jivo, Lono, Memo, Lodo, Menoje, Dumbo, Sanje, John de Bejo, Jojo, Tubo, Lo, Shangzhen, Judo, Josu, Che, 光子刚女所觉当子所见的公婆的婆呢，我年纪的那出去，这次开包去了江浙路，那到跟我就都走走，一些叫做世界人不中，这不就的说那那年。我不求你去了江浙路，才觉得我正面大雨。 先多找就能上子路，对着街道随波送。鸟面去见就能上子路，公布都结结的。当街见边的毛布，是那云的叫做电线线了上子路，道边的叫着我。 给人送的这些，几多的那求救。 现在就那上子路，这年这月那样，老板到了这多年，先给当把一点，给的那样上子路，对把这样那样，给我平送出把些，让给3年用数，天天上街的把也，干嘛着这嘛没。 就么在我这不弄，没弄路多真多。这些全弄的大大，是弄的越当街随吧。高帮到那真正这点的，个当那当7月老出，随便错人着。
Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Vulture Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the 5 skandhas and their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Sharadvati Putra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The 5 skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty. Emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness. Having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight, and so on, until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance, and so on, up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the 3 times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasamgate Bodhi Soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvati Putra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, suras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Namano Kange Lodru Drini Drini Nida Nana Rasebe Jeni Degi Jijin Zishe Niji Doga Nemonzi Kanda Sibi Tsura Mari Mido Dongi Jizabi Dozo Gyula Buji Dozi Yala Juji Yadin Su Dodo Chido Nyemu Nyemu Deji Chado Jozi Mare Mize Dongi Nyogo Chini Chunzi Lirano Dene Doji Saji Dosi Yudin Lizo Jasi Toye Jiro Jidong Jini Jinri Dali Mi Jambi Yang Di Ara Baza Nadi Ara Baza Nadi Ara Baza Nadi Sede Chiji Chira Yudhi Dali Demu Niba Rasene Kada Denju Jonu Doba Ye Lodu Bobi No Lodo Zo Zo Jembu Inju Sho Ye Mil Yendo Do Ye Re Gādrīṃ chīmbī gōnyā jēsōng dēn, gōsōng tōjī ngōjō chādō sō, tēnsō gēlē shēwē chīmbī gō, āyē rōyē rēwā gōnyē sō, mārī shējā jījēn sēbē tō, shājē sōwān dēnā sōwān dēn, tōjī chīmbō dēshē tōjī chā, Chose de lo bo da na ro bo. Ben jo zhong bi bo da a de sha. Nyang ne xin lo ju lo so wa de. Shang bo to mi yin ni na zhu de. Cho de de yue de dang zhe bi be. Zai zang ge san le ni si ne bo. Ya jin shi bi ji la so wa de. Da yu yu mi shong ji le du. Da wo zhou bo zhi bi ku zhu ji. San jie guan zhong bo bo ya zi su. San mo da yu ji la so wa de. Xi zhu dang bi chuang a de xiang. Ga dang dian bi mian bo zhong zhen ji. Nian zhu nang xi gu qi su la su. Ga dang la ma nang la su wa de. Gong jian xin de zi jie zong ga ma. Nge de ri bin wo xiu jie zhe jie. Da ma dian bi da bo ke zhu jie. Yao zi jie ba jie la su wa de. Jie wa gun de jiao song gun de la ma du jie chang. Gang la gang de xian nian cui zhuang de. 说到天梦我着正在边，只见老马弄了说完的，人家说了跟了大爷面，街上淘宝这边中秋，在人这边他看直播。孙子先年拿了说完的，且我更多养到那么多，这面确实别了那些劲，撒当那这样的着作的，多久讲给我念到说，三节学当初节就那么。想就不多大年就做起，老给去这边做那去，到了便是上街走过去，上街去当出去就那，想就不多大年就做起，老给去这边做那去，到了便是上街走过去。当街去当出街就那，讲究不多大年就做的，老给去这边做那的，到了便是上街就不就。哎呀，当我做等着着。当我做个对劲呢，马上就得当街我做讲的时候了，叫我当街的呢去。老马弄的每个些年期间的节呢，你上了就知道吧。有的他些小事的，当我做大不了新碰到经的，他那边去个经常忙下个碰到经的，对也是。
So it is a common prayers that followers of the Buddha's teaching that in all our lifetimes may I follow the path that is unmistaken or the genuine path. And in other words, the genuine paths and grounds to be perfected. And the perfection of genuine path and grounds be accomplished by myself. This is the kind of prayer that we all share as a followers of the Buddha's teaching.
当我呢昨天讲我说给大家介绍那当年前原因呢，就碰到等我呢那个就碰到等住的说的知道啊，我呢我这的中中讲那我呢当啊，一个真的多不我的觉得也一些呢适当的嘛，都是谈到高等阶层吧，这，那点结吧马车。 아니 되게 취진데 댐비게 아니 랑데 단단 녀석네 여기 거짓문에 지나 가서 그거 쇼지 정보질 키도도
So this is the prayer that we are, we all, as we pray, if you look at ourselves and then we see that at some point we are at, for certain extents, in other words, sorry, for certain extents, for the temporarily, on our present situations, we are, you know, at certain extents, we are fulfilling our prayers because we're able to follow the teachings of his, the great teachers like His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Not only that the one particular teachings, but also able to follow the teachings of the both Sutra and Tantra, and given us a wonderful opportunity to follow his footsteps to practice the Buddha Dharma.
인자네 되게 고고 정보데 소소를 치비가라 고고 정보데 정보인 거 뭐시베 토네 아니 당가서 대량한 것을 봐봐대 아니지 뭐네지 맞소기 당가 쪽이 세고라 당이 이게 시내내서 덤버 투병을 배봐도 뭐네지 또 방문도 전에 방가 쪽에는 지 가서 다 제이 집어러나 이게 집어 담아 싸지면 잡아 니 지대 방진의 편절이 지 아니 된지게 되면 다간제 대다기 가서기 가르쳐보러 때 GS 생산하면도 다기 혈로 도야라야 돼요. 소송원에나 할래기 겨워서 버려도.
So now, as we know that we are having such a wonderful opportunity, and it is vital for us to recognize this opportunity as having such opportunities and identifying opportunities. The teachings that we are receiving today is the teachings that I have received from my own teachers, to be able to trace all the way back to the Buddha himself, the actual teacher of all of us. And so it is those great teachers who have followed these teachings and realized, had gained these realizations and transmitted to the disciples, in other words, the unbroken chain of lineage. So we are also having a wonderful opportunity to follow their footsteps and to be able to participate ourselves, to receive the unbroken chain of lineage of the particular teachings. Thus, it is such a wonderful, it is fortunate for all of us to be able to participate in receiving such teachings.
된지게 가와던 내면거네 가서 되게 찾아나기 아니 덤버 투병보다 랑레 집에 라마나 주권되게 지 메바체 엔텔라 취진데 대바체 아니 랑냐게니 랑게 되제 파마츠베니 신제나 랑다 지송 대화되지 동면면과 지송인바 강시지라 아니 저다려와 차세되니 뇌내 슈베게 덤발라 인상에게 아니 니제다 대바니 지만에 아니 지 삼발라 소화되서 그 대한다라 그러니까 손스치 메바체인다.
With this, recognizing how wonderful opportunity and the fortunate that we are able to receive such teachings. With this, one will be one's mind should be delighted by understanding how fortunate it is for all of us to be able to participate in these teachings. With this, then let's take a couple of minutes to meditate by visualizing Buddha in front of oneself in the space, surrounded by great Lam Rim masters, lineage masters of the Lam Rim, and being yourself in their presence, surrounded by all sentient beings. As you wish to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings, think about it. So all sentient beings too have a similar wish to achieve happiness and overcome suffering. And in order to achieve happiness, overcome sufferings, there's no other hopes for us but to rely and take refuge in the three jewels, or the great beings, or the sublime beings, and have a compassion towards sentient beings.
다 되는 게 경로 제가 진행하네. 강세바 사이 연내네. 상조랑지는 봐. 대바송제 대바송세나래 지부송제나 내가 좀 비진 전화도 마소나이네. 전화 동보내에서도 토리로 타마신이 봐도 아니 자 선생님 봐 지신 아니 가서 장마노와다 고래마체 봐도 고래마노와다 장마체 봐도 저기 거네 강사지 냐래 지신 봐. 이거 타차스 지상이게 드리기양 지 살만노하게 지 덤바세나리 드리진지에 대한 아주 그들이 그것을 봐봐 강친에 집이 취해 되더라.
With this motivations, one is then receiving the teachings, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which is the lamp for three vehicles, or the lamp for three stages of the stages of the path for a person, small, middling, and great capacities. So it is such a wonderful teaching that we are having such a wonderful opportunity to receive. Just like, at the school that we have, the initial stage we have kindergarten, first grade, second grade, and all the way to high school and finishing our, universities and so forth. And similarly, which if you look at this particular teaching that we are receiving, it is a teaching, it serves as a synopsis which bring together the key points of the entire teachings of the Buddha without, incompleteness, and with a proper sequence or the stages where we can travel upon and unmistaken. So therefore, it is this teachings, such a immaculate teachings, that we are having the opportunity to receive.
야 그러 제 라레세데 제 대파다 치진도 영해지게 냐네 제나마도야 너저 댕에 지지종을 제바 제거나야 제다 저는 로그에서 제 많이 봐 너저기 돈에 좀 두타는 러센 델레 라로에 맹에 근데 야 대파 코노기 돈에 방한진의 냐설에서나 노에 맹에 너네 강게 차네 왜 메시 비다고 쉬지래도
It is such a pure teachings in the particular context that great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, Lam Rim Teachings. It's not only, this teaching is not only designed for someone who has a great faith only, but rather it is also designed for analysis, someone who go through a critical analysis of the teachings of the Buddha. So in other words, it is a combination of the teachings that is served as a combination for both someone who has a great faith in the Buddhist Buddha Dhamma, and also someone who would like to undergo a critical analysis of the teachings of the Buddha, are, very succinctly presented in this particular teachings.
당가서 제바시나는 몬타서래 제응네 전에 지 맞속에 첨마선 내보면 세죠로 응외네 시래도 당고 다는 맞속에 뭐도 제바에 내보면 세요디 뭐도 제바세도 뭐비 떠슈지 세요디 조율라 제다지 아니 라니라 내보면 중에 지는 뭐부 떠슈지리 발라도 빼빼 미신 내가 치머래도 뭐비 떠슈된 게 와래서나 참마 용사 코로라고 말와 인산에 용대 지단량에 제정 발에다 뭐 떠슈지 배제나요 아니 너버맹이지 그래도
So this is, how traditionally, analyzes the teachings of the Buddha by applying a three analysis. The first analysis is what's called semasum, which is the valid analysis, in other words. This should not be invalidated by the three valid analyses. The first analysis is to have, by means of engaging in the first analysis, and the teaching should not be contradicted by the manifested phenomena. It should not be contradicted by the actual reality, the manifested reality of things and event.
인자네 텐드이네 강라네고 메쳐데 토마 네 넘버 토비 온버네 아니 다랑게 텐지 사이라메 바데니 당가 주마징에 용에게 아니 제바비 쳐와체 아니 다 텐드이 강라 속에 유체되니라 아니 다징엘로 네게 세마 간체지게 되는 네바맹에게 네다 텐드이 당가 쳐바체 제제 네 당가를 기바치비 치지 쳐와 아니 다 치와니다 데비 쳐라니 예시 제다시고세데 아니 마타야 샹주스니 방랑천주지 샹주생 챙여베나데 영해나 생겨야 되지 아니 이제바 담방을 하면 제대로 이름 봐 저희 사제 디진도지
So therefore, as we talked about earlier, that once, the analysis of this teachings should be based on those three kinds of analysis that we talked about earlier. The first should not be first analysis. The teaching should not be contradicted by the manifested, phenomena, and then should not be contradicted by the, obscure phenomena. It should not be contradicted by the reasoning of the extremely obscure phenomena, and so on. So therefore, this is the kind of teaching that we are receiving is completely free from those completely free from those errors of the three analyses. So with this, then we are able to cover that three from first, second, third headlines or the outlines of this Lam Rim Chenmo. And then the fourth outlines is the greatness of, enabling one to understand that all of the scriptures are instructions for practice.
That's why such a bala kading, the shagre, launch its our senior timbi, then a lot of in bars, then a candid over say Deniro.
So then this is then be followed by the sub outlines or the subdivisions. The fourth sub outlines are the how to rely on the teachers, which is the root of our spiritual path, and how to studies and train the student's mind, or train one's mind, in other words, after having relied on teacher.
And then a lot of Jetajan Balani, they then a new bowling bishop, and new bochetan limbi, Tsuni, Tatomodisa. Then you bought Jetan limbi, Sudalani, Lanchi, Najalang, Baches, and new bowlings in Mochi, Tatomodisa. Then you bowlings in Motella, Sonji, Jibuchungida, Tumoy Lager and Manas and Nancy, Jubunjela, Tumoy Lager and Manas and Nancy, Jibuchimbi Lager and Manas and Nancy, Tatomoni Drisa. That Jibuchimbi Lager and Manas and Nancy, Sonji, Zaysaji. Teaching Jubi Gotamba Senje, Konademba, Sente Jetajibi Tsu, Senje and Shabala Luce. That you know the Senji Nibate, Nibate, Ne San Casa, teaching what else, Sente Jetajibi Silla, Neji, Jokala Tene Jawa, Ne Sanjang Rimba, Jibi Chokazon Sage, Tama, and Senji Chokazon singing there. Senji Chokazon Zita, Sosola Shanchu Sengi. Any Lojana, Chacha Chanson of the Gojilla, any Jibutambi in a danger to night and Regina, and Shanchu singing Dambalango or Edge, and the Dambalene, any Candas Songore, kissing Yanson, and Shijo can Richagore said, Masotanda such a Jana, and Richigo dead.
So now we are on the particular chapter, the ritual for adapting the spirit of enlightenment. By the ritual for adopting the spirit of enlightenment is that you take a bodhisattva's vow by means of rituals, and having taken the bodhisattva's vow, how one can safeguard the vows that you have already received, and how one can prevent these vows from deteriorations, in other words, from declinations.
Any young, you miss another Joe Shima pension, any Shanchus and Rajila, any range day to a Gitandala, any Karichagore said. Then you read.
So now here we're discussing on how we can cultivate bodhicittas, and how, having cultivated bodhicitta, how we can preserve and prevent bodhicitta from undergoing degenerations. And so how we can generate bodhicitta is by contemplating, at this point, contemplating on the meanings of the bodhicitta and contemplating on the stages of the meditation instructions of the bodhicitta. And then having contemplated on that, and how we can still, preserve this bodhicitta, not only for this lifetime, but also in our future lifetime.
Do you know you also did that the Joashima Pension Manabi Tandalain, Nabi Chiji Pamba, Gabi Chiji Juba, singing the Tanichil Logdo, the Nabi Chiji Pamba city, Godevador, Tombodella, any Lamadan, Sanjala Sopate, Zun, Sien, and Gogota and Deredo. Niba de Legenja Goaching in the Rani and Jobachi, Zen Jobachi Chiba, Jobajador. In the Sumba de Nishanju Sambala Sopatedala, any Katamba, Sanjala Katomba, and Goandeva.
So now, how can we preserve this bodhicitta that we have generated without undergoing degenerations? Here we talk about 4 dark practices and 4 light practices. And the 4 dark practices must be abandoned in order to preserve. So the 4 dark practices that if we review that briefly, first, one should not indulge in lying to one's spiritual masters, spiritual friends, and so on. And second, one should not let others regret over their virtuous actions, something that should not be regretted, right? And then third, it's gossiping and something we are talking badly about others, about friends and friends in general, and entire beings in particular. And then also the 4th one is one should not, pretend oneself, even though that you may not know something, but you pretend to know something. You are pretending to know something, and you're pretending to have a great knowledge of this Dharma and so forth. And also with this, then also one should not be hiding one's, misconducts, in other words, one's faults. So those are the four dark practices that need to be abandoned in order to preserve one's, bodhicitta.
Na chu jibo de na pi chu je de na ta ne je na bo sen de yang de ge ma so meri de ge yang ke cha ge yang de ge ni ma de ge si ba ko lo ji le de je bi ka la ni ka bo sho de la de no ro je na bo sho de ge no ro se de ni shi je ji ge che de de le ne pe re se ne ni ma so ge he je de so lo ji do ta de de ge ne da ma ro na bo se de che da nga so ji me pa de ha de me pa sen ge che ro ka na se de
ji na mun ba si kyo sha ro che
알렌 다다레 세자 데르기 거고도 아테 강에 텐도 아니 망가서 계시지
나 보면 கொஞ்சம் 문바 시에샤
왔다다레 대체 에 아니 동보제 때 장가 수술 하고서는 같이제 때 나보제 때 예되게 가르사 나치제 때에 아니 니볼은 도와 돼 거대면 도와 얘네 같이 동보 때 가서 동보니 번이던 로자를 같이 동보 때 아니 지 겸모셔 생절을 자주 메싱인데 같이 동보 때려 도와 근데 같이 니바다 하서 삼바 하서 나다게 돈에 니 젠라 정보제에 니 같이 니바데라도 당아서 같이 숨바데려도 가서
So then the 4 light practices 같이 시보들라 கொஞ்சம் 나와도 멤버 시샤 나와
네 네 아주 대다 데려와다
나오나 கொஞ்சம் 나와 시작와 나와 있지 시작 So here we should not the first light practices are one should not lie even as a joke to others, should not let others think that what you are saying is true, though that you are jokingly lying to the others. So that is one should be very careful with that. And then
니바데 가서 되게 로고도 요지게 님이라 그 하산나버 하산 가서 합담비 정보지 정자제 봐
always be truthful to others. One should not one should always remain truthful and be in other words be honest and sincere.
정보 제바도 요지 제바니 카테 차로 그러 되지 다 나치 손바데 가세 손바데 비명이 산사베등에 같이 로차이 써서와 지당가 저 데려와 나치 손바데 상추 선발을 카통한데 이제나 꼬았다 바데래도 디긴 같이 손바데 아니 상추 선발은 진짜 간르지나 덤비 디시제네 는 하버죠 그거도 덤비 디시자네 아니 단하자고 단하
So the third light practices is that one should not, lie to even to a single individual. One should abandon from lying, not at all. Even by, even as a joke, one should not be lying to others. So therefore, what it says is now, one instead of that, as a when it comes in the context of the third life practices, it is one should always treat all beings as one's own spiritual teacher, and one should consider them as one's spiritual teachers.
아니 가서 로산데 가래 되오게
我个站在地方里面去，
我个给我전주写吧 데려와
我打人了，我去，地，
쇼기 줘봐 샤워 세제 아니 되인다 그러면 로그인다
那说不去。
我个给我找자주写本都장 폐다매번 폐다매번 마세 마와데 샹세다 조라 셰다다 녀바 셰시 마쇼에 세스 대난데 송도 알고 대 된다 등에 이렇게 충분히 맞은 마스 디지털로지다
那说。 So let's read through the text, okay? Just page 79. It is under the headings of developing the ideas that all bodhisattvas are the teacher, right? So here we begin from, we'll resume from last paragraph. We have read through a half paragraphs. So it starts from, we cultivate some small lightness of the virtue, but find that it has no sign of increasing and has many signs of decreasing. This is simply the outcome of our hating, despising, or reviling bodhisattvas and friends.
当俺做等着了去给我清楚去写个意思写着写的说的去感觉给予说了进着比去的去清楚写个来的也能让去了给我建议给我也拍大这团员们都啊拍大给我拍比大面把嘛子你我说个对劲这看见哪样着的是等着了上去三八当你等着给着看人把他们个钱你就是了看团员说的你等着去过到说的这钱的这个你给我了嘛写个送多
So here, although we are considering ourselves as a practitioner and cultivating a virtue, in other words, engaging in the virtuous actions and cultivating merits for the virtue, we have no sign. We are unable to identify on any kind of sign that increment of our virtue within ourselves. Why this is happening is because we are not being very careful with whenever we go with somebody or we join or we socialize with a group of people and so on and so forth. We have a different kind of feeling towards them. Based on one's own, induced by one's own negative thoughts and emotions, and having a dislike, having some kind of, you're not liking someone, and with that kind of unliking someone and not liking someone, you have some kind of attitude towards those individuals, which then the danger is there might be some bodhisattvas, who knows, which then really makes degenerates your virtue and merit that we have accumulated.
다 된주기 전에 카톤한테 상추 선바 진바다 최소한이나 델레시나 차와요르스 대난로 대난데다 상선을 만진바 방와니 투나 소디네 간자라 네비 년주송바 탕치 명송데 네 상선 강나요 미셰베 외송지 시바다 선제경로 덤빈디 시제네 단나장 온던제바 예노 송도 되
So here, so when we begin to speak badly about others, and to whom you are speaking, the person happened to be a bodhisattva, then we're in great danger, right? We're in a careless situation, in other words. So therefore, it is very essential for every one of us be very careful with whomever we associate with or whomever we go with, and try yourself not to say something badly about others and not to have a negative feeling towards others. So let's read through the text here again. It says, therefore, it is said that if you are capable of eliminating the first two faults as well as the reviling of bodhisattvas, all the harm related to the person mentioned in the compendium of trainings will be averted. This is based on the consideration that you do not know who is bodhisattvas as stated in the Kasyapa chapters. You should train in the pure perception of all living beings that comes from developing the idea that all beings are one's teachers.
되지. 되지는 것도 대로 단어 장세된 것도 주단에나 슈슈 단어 장세는 하던 된적이 지지 강거 계속해 말어. 뭐 틀라 강도 강도 장세에 지 단디바진나 담디바 강요나 아니 냐래라 자투에 양 가서지 강도 쓰던 로비에 다니게라 메다시 세데 아니 초대 제번 좀 봐쇼세에 되게 로장기 디스콜라 라네도네 아니 되냐와 샤와뉴에 제로와 So checho de nyomola kat sui rangla kalo ne nyomogi nyemeta ne jendal pa yo mongo me chedro.
So it is, whether we are in a good situation or the bad situations, regardless of what kind of situation we may be in, as a practitioner, we should always be able to take all these situations into the favorable conditions of one's practice, into the path, is able to converge into one's spiritual path, regardless of what kind of situation we may be in. So, so now, as we find in the 8 verses of the Training the Mind, where it says one should always look at oneself as a lower than others. That is what is meant. Whenever this happens, as if we consider ourselves as a spiritual practitioners, one should really look inward instead of looking outward. Look inward and find, and identify one's negative thoughts and emotions and all the mental afflictions, and try to recognize that and try to avert that, try to get rid of that at the moment that you realize that there is some kind of manifesting negative thoughts that occur in one's continuum.
거들 가서 세계에도 거들 추진 조선에서 상주 선바스 상주 생기 담바된저 상주 선바레마도 가서 저당 가서 얘기 걸어 겸에게 레카도 세위디 아니 유르되는 메겨와이너 겨왔다 쳐야돼 아니 파마다 게게다 라라 같은 컨셉어데 아니 유르체는 고고도도 미마비시버터 쳐서나 디바다 쳐 용거서나 용가서 이게 레전에 거든 라사로와 유르된 비기 메겨왔다 쳐야돼 내 생기 지송 바자로와.
So here, we are just taking as illustrations or the examples of how, dangerous it is if you think badly about someone who is a bodhisattva. We already talked about that. We already covered that during our previous teachings, that if you have a bad feeling or negative feeling towards someone who is so kind to oneself, right? Such as one's parents, one's teacher, and someone who assessed you from the depth of his or her heart. Previously, if you talk something badly about that individuals, karma will be, significantly intense than in comparison to the regular negative karma.
내가 저기 저기 다들 멍청아 되는 저 대비 장신선等现有了等这个两个做嘛让心或者抓起来个呀你学半年把等这些说那开始这个设定你们的来都有但我做引进面这个配的开的价格呢让你告诉去本的呢然后好像这个呢开始这个这个人嘛都然就都原来没了的就说给刚刚的说说给最可以完全呢说说弄弄的你现在这个没多你이미 다다데 조심하는 전에다나 다 가사장이甚至进说呢刚刚车的牛毛是想的说呢가사랑에把的写比托呢让你就把刚才这写说呢所以呢当来的接触个多
So now here we often receive I'm often asked a question by saying that however if someone who is so bad to oneself, how can we withstand with such individual who is so bad to oneself? And so now here it really depends on the circumstances. It's at for certain circumstances we might able to confront that person, that too without any cultivation of hatred or anger. But other than that, when you see someone who is so bad and someone who is doing something that is not right, and it is not really necessary for one to go and confront that person. It entirely depends on, we should look at the appropriateness of time and circumstances, whether it is appropriate, whether it is the right time for us to react towards this individual and so forth. So therefore, rather, one should always look at oneself and see the faults of negative thoughts and emotions. And if you're able to identify and understand the faults of negative thoughts and emotions, and then you will not generate any kind of negative feeling towards that individual, because such individual is actually remaining under the power of the delusions of negative thoughts and emotions. So therefore, you will not have discomfort. You will not get annoyed by such negative actions of other beings.
연대 저거 네바비 걸어 버나 이제 수지 손에 맞으나 네바 요안에 마이노 데네 나치 손비 네보 손도
So here it says let's read the text. You should praise bodhisattvas when there are listeners on hand, but you incur no fault if you do not go out into the four directions, praising them. This is a remedy for the third dark practice.
내가 줘야 내가 지를 근데 막 뒤가는 덤비 디시자네 쇼실랑 한번 저걸 써야 돼 인치미 좀 한번 맞으는 예반 좀 예봐요 말이야 한번 저서대야 뒤셔들 거도 보나 아니 지 상주생이 편시와다等进度내가说너무多 그때는 소속이 연대대 시여된 장달을 거스 마버님이 나면도 되는 용도 인치미지게 거스 번도나 아니시 아니 거스 보면은 돼요 지 팬도 이게 내가 처음 쓰와 명연자네 되게 거를 맞아나요 아니 그런 예바 차고 말했어도
So here now it's when we come across with someone who is with the negative intentions and someone who is engaging in negative actions, in order to address that individual, it is always good to see the appropriateness of time and appropriateness of the circumstances. Otherwise, even though that out of pure motivations, you may approach such individual such individual by having an intention of preventing such individual to engaging in such a negative act, and it may not help. That happens to all of us, and sometimes we, out of compassion or of great, motivations, we go and we approach that person and we try to advise, but this will not be, accepted by the other person. Rather, he or she become more, negative. So therefore, it is very important for us to understand and to recognize this, appropriateness of time.
나초 somebody 상초 삼바다 상초 삼바 상초 생기 담바 줄을 대한데 tel라 아니 고아다에 된바 되게 상초 삼바기 디시전 하바 저디 주보데 카테 따다 키소아.
So here now, the third, dark practice that we talked about earlier is to not to, talk badly about someone. As an example, someone who has a, bodhisattva's vow. So now, when it comes to the antidote towards that, is the third light practices. That is, one should not, one should always refrain from saying badly about us, talking badly about others. Rather, one should consider all beings as one's teacher. So it really becomes a remedy towards the third dark practices.
대체 당연 저게 저도 마음으로도 너무 정으로지 가서 뼈대서 자서 가담be 라마치게 네 상추 생각도 걸라 인 메마에 되는 뭐요네 메마에 뭐지게 내가 셔러데 메마에 지게 아니 가서 콜라 내가 가르치는 시거로 코로레 가서 짜치와 지기도 하세요 아니 근데 좀 로지도 인터넷 상추 삼발을 근데 전에도 카톡 거에 거는 예 말로 왔다 각각 류도노시 견소대 제가 맞송이 단다 제게 생기지 실내서나 내가 소콜 가르치는 거가 저 계속 뭐가 왔잖아 그 무슨 말을 듣지로 소수 단다를 류노시 견소대 제게 동행이 미치라 이제 tel바 카테잖아 대화 말을 넣었나 신어서 쉬지로
So, His Holiness has, remarked about one of the Kadamba Gishis, Kadamba practitioners, during his teachings last night. He said that there were a practitioner who were practicing and meditating, I think meditating on bodhicitta. And it is said that there were a lot of spirits, that some of them are very harmful and vicious spirits around that practitioners. And where then there was the number of them, and some of them are, actually trying to, inflict harm upon the practitioners, the meditators. But then there were some who were just, suggesting their, their colleagues not to inflict harm upon him or harm upon him, because he is always meditating on compassion and considering we as a precious than himself, his own life, and he's always engaging in the practice by looking at all beings as a precious than himself. And why should we really, why there's no reason for inflict harm upon him. And this is how it is said. So therefore, it is really, important, because it is not, if someone who is a bodhisattva, why should we really talk badly about this person? There's no reason for us, because he is completely engaging in the practice by looking at other sentient beings as most precious than himself, the more precious than himself, in other words. And he's willing to even sacrifice his own life, and everything can be sacrificed for the welfare of other sentient beings. There's no reason for us to, think badly and say badly about bodhisattvas.
Tentu imechiyonan sambilin ngone ke jogosaro telda ngone dana ngaso sambilin dela pento kanga kansa chende ngesono shidi tamasane phigoro ta tentu gi shaju sam ngosu che yo ina da ngone tela tera matona de sodong gorero halero shuji jogosaro.
So it is, amazing if the bodhisattvas, bodhisattvas is a really, bodhisattva is really a worthwhile to be praised, right? Because even in our mundane, existence in our world, if someone who always who bring about, who actually work for the welfare of other beings, we recognize that person and we, bestow award. With this, such individual is awarded by certain, awards, and so on and so forth. So therefore, if there is such individual who is bodhisattvas, then who else can be a more worthier to be praised?
다 같이 주비 유네 손도 같이 주비 유네 membership senjen no sondo dela shawane.
So now we are on that the fourth light practices by saying, causing the living beings that you are helping to mature, to not want to, modest vehicle, but to attain to perfect enlightenments.
ngaso usually da kachu jabate los yina yuje mi ja leka chena leka ches yuje ro den ro di yude sersana rangi mi ba shebe senje de pena chi sozo gegen ro chena ni getu de loja tesa ki getu de ya lojo ya bo yon da da de ro de na ye ni shangchu sen ye shangchu samba de da ge leka chesa de senje mi ba shingi ge mi ba she go ro je mi ba zobe shangchu sanje le ro mi ba shingi en de ge senje tangje So therefore
it says the object of the fourth light practice is living beings that you are helping to mature, right? So, so here now, it is the bodhisattvas who always work tirelessly for the welfare of other sentient beings, to mature other sentient beings. What is meant by maturing other sentient beings is to mature to embark upon the path to a state of enlightenment. That is what is meant by mature. So it is based on their the instructions, the bodhisattva's instructions, and so forth. One's mind will be mature. So we are ready to embark upon the spiritual path.
다 선제도서라 간제체는 미바 시거리로나 제거잖아 샤와네 아니 니체이 테파 면되바 조비 샹추든 주바오 소도.
So now it's how bodhisattvas actually work for the welfare of other beings, and how they work to mature other sentient beings. Here it says, what you do to them is cause them to not want the modest in a vehicle or Hinayana, but to adhere to perfect enlightenment. That is what is meant. That is how that one should mature other sentient beings.
맞죠. 니체와다 지공이 전에 시에서나 지라반데 지세로 변는 대로 변는 니랑이 테바데 니체와레 조비 샹추데 아니 다 전용이로 맞촌 데레 니랑이 테바데 맞촌 소르모데 준춘춘이로 아니 조비 샹추데 타이 장소로 데로 인자네 그 찬소 취소나 토만의 타이 장소는 로야데 티그레마도 아니 동법하셔게 추천주진의 로 연주체네 추천주로나 된 지금 말에 맞서 라게지라 가서 게den이 있어버려 랍지라 제가 말에 토만의 조비 상제살에 체에데 제그레 송도아.
So why it's just what it is, that is what is meant by the modest vehicle is the vehicle of Sarvaka and Pratyeka Buddhas. Why these two are called the vehicle, the modest vehicle is because it is not a complete state of enlightenment. It is not a complete elimination of our negative thoughts and emotions. So it is just like for example, it's like a small lake. There are two small lakes, but then when speaking about the complete state of enlightenment, we're talking about oceans. So we just try to compare that lake. One can make a comparison of lake and oceans. So what is suggesting here is now one should not plan to mature in beings to take to the lake, but rather one is trying to one should measure to the oceans. That is what's meant by 10 minutes break.
아야 당연히 로인다. 마스 로토에 제가 선요. 엄마 진 로토면도. 아. 대양 수도하다. 대양 랑기 거네 디샤텔라 상황 거지. 디샤텔라 삼버데 마잖아. 냠파 로 마니데 주바미네 비셔로 선도.
So let's read through the text again. It says, moreover, from your perspective, it is necessary for them to connect to the Mahayana path. But if your disciples do not develop the intention for it, you incur no fault, because you are simply unable to accomplish it.
대체 저단에 가서 대 변화로와 temadi onda shena tutama jichungade tayugone hamade shimashimigi jumijela dores ani sangano ne jude jesombade jude hama yede ani shimashima mijelo sede ani je tembagi kanjiyona tatu ani shawani menebe nyandele chiyege ni koromi teredo ayena nekama tentang chane shena ani ta kasa tepan ramada tenroa.
So now, if you look at the teachings of the Buddha, so teachings of the Buddha is given under the framework of what we call the four philosophical tenets. So when it comes to the four philosophical tenets, it should not be looked at as a contradictory, proponents or their positions. But rather, it says all four of those four different philosophical tenets will become a favorable condition for one to, advancing one's philosophical viewpoint. Beginning from first, second, third to fourth. It should not be it should not be something that is contradictory or completely discordant with the next philosophical tenets and so forth, but rather it become a cause for giving rise to the realization of the advanced philosophical tenets. Similarly, when speaking about the four classes of the tantras, the four classes of the tantra is also given on the basis of the individual's capacity, individual's faculties, and so forth. So therefore, each of those four classes of tantra should become a cause for one another. And after all, in brief, Buddha's intention, though that he has given a variety of teachings and a variety of standpoints when it comes to the ultimate nature of reality, his intention is to establishing entire sentient beings to the state of non-abiding nirvana, which is complete state of enlightenment.
Chidayana dina katushia yana tomade tende tibachime lala koro tena ya kansa rani ki juma tu na ngeba yo mara sone de katu tenda tender jire do yana shanchu samadu za tawla keba ma sonyo di kala ani bena ngani ye chuta ma jen ye chara keche shen ma shena tende gin dewa to no lo tai chara ki ton le yo tanda shubi chane she sona jangdo ne ngenjong yu samba ba timo chansol go ro 아니 걔네 손에 아니 상년주데 아니 가시안로로네 상주 있어데 니지 몬로터 제니 아니 대바치신 여와데 되네신 셰임으로 Tene che ko langa chiyo ge jungshi dawo de sanje salan ro jungshi rang ting do.
So here when we speak about, the Mahayana path, although that we have a different, even within the Mahayanas, when it comes to the philosophical tenets of philosophical standpoint of actual mode of existence of things and event, it varies. There's a disparities among the Mahayana scholars and the Mahayana philosophical tenets, and however, whether it is by the teachings of lower classes or the high classes of the philosophical tenets, what is common at the teachings of this is all of them has given unanimously on the basis of understanding of what we call tende, which is the dependent originations. Similarly, when it comes to the conduct, the practice of conducts, which beginning from taking refuge in rituals and advancing one's practice on love, compassion, bodhicitta, and so on and so forth. All of those different practices are given ultimately to establish an entire sentient being. In other words, guiding entire sentient beings to the state of complete enlightenment.
De nacho nibi kasen de nacho niba pante sondo nacho niba de jenje gyawa shebala yang rani joba chenare ni jen joba chi jiban ro chiro wa dante sanjela tu zewa chimbi gone zobe sanje sale che samba de na ani jen gyawa chebala joba che ji na rani joba che go jetsen jin mewa ko de nibo chabar sondo.
So therefore, if one cultivates a motivations of taking entire sentient beings, establishing entire sentient beings to the state of complete enlightenment, this will then become a direct antidote towards the second dark practices of letting other beings regret upon their virtuous deeds and so forth.
New pante che jen dewa tangche je tatu bala ni tabane jo deba yo na jen la yi mi de yin jo pa sanshi jebi che to yi mi dewa jebi jowa che de mi rubi sharo sondu tere.
So here it says now, this light practice eliminates the second dark practice, making others feel regret about something that is not regrettable, right? Because if you want from the depth of your heart to others to set forth towards the culmination of all happiness, you will not do something that brings about unhappiness in others, so as to make them feel some regret about their virtuous activity.
Deche. Tanda kachu jipa de nyane chengi ye ne nachu nipa ye kate la ta ko ranshu je le yong do a. Pejo itela ani jopa che de ni ne pigi ge shanchu sa da rangji le chero chena sa ne phajo de le zewa chimba kale jobi gola ani pigi ge shanchu sa che yong na de la kasa gyawa du bala jopa che yi tanda la bechen du ku maro wa de. Mune chen nga jite ye de ko chena de yi kate ro a.
So it is, direct antidotes towards the second dark practices, right? Because second dark practices is you are making someone to regret, make them regret something that is not regrettable. In other words, someone who is engaging in the practice, someone who's engaging in a spiritual practice, such as cultivating bodhicitta and so forth. And there's no reason for such individual who is engaging in the practice to working for the welfare of entire sentient beings to regret having regret, upon regret with regard to their practices. It is not there's no reason for someone to regret, or there's no reason for us to make them regret, over their practice of bodhicitta.
That said, the Tendriki Nyanechi, and Shanchu San, more the Madina, Tendriki Nyanechi Tungachina, and Jiwa Jimane, and Shanchu San, the Majawa Kandion would have said, and pay going to show me the song to Jetta, and you London, the quarter of Sonyo. Then the Joshima Pendula Shanchu San Yagumare said there are Tandati, Kachu, somebody, Kachu Jibanyasanena.
Since we're on the particular the chapter of how one can preserve our bodhicitta in our future life, is because now at this particular life, although that you may not be able to cultivate or may not be able to generate actual bodhicitta within one's stream of being, if one tries one's best to cultivate bodhicitta and practice to familiarize the cultivating bodhicitta within oneself, and suddenly one will be able to cultivate bodhicitta, generate bodhicitta, the actual bodhicitta in one's future life.
Single Shuba Lejan, Jawa Kindu Susan, Melanaya Sendene, Dominjuna, Midget Sewa, Kangin Juru, Shekatse essay, Singing what you do.
So then it's a sutra requested by Lion, what it says. Sima Paripatya Sutra also says, if you cultivate the spirit of enlightenment in all lives and do not abandon it even in dreams, what is the point of mentioning not abandoning it when you are not sleeping?
Oh, that Tata Tansua. When the Joe Malan Sinjula Shanchuki sent Madoa, Shanchuki sent Malan Yasu meet the Genada, and teaching us a Nima could be Nekanada, and Shanchuki sent the Major the Civil Setaro Sondoa.
It is very clear where it says, if you cultivate the spirit of enlightenment in all lives and do not abandon, even in dream, right? Even in one's dreams. What is the point of mentioning not abandoning it when you are not sleeping? So it's very clear, because if you are putting an effort to engaging in the practice, even in your dream, then suddenly this is when you are not sleeping, this practice will be naturally undertaken by the practitioner. So then here it says, the Buddha said, cause to enter into enlightenment, the beings in villages and cities or in any other place they may dwell, and you will not relinquish that spirit of enlightenment.
Shanchu Sene Pede Shanchu Combatin Zugu, Katachena, and Sanjay Yato, the Shanchu Sen Yato. Dronda Trungazoina, you the Dronda Tronchetta, the Lepicola, Nego, Noyoye, Shanchu Sala Soba, the General Sobate, Noyoye Lado Ejero. Nishanchu Samba said the Tendemedo, Kadina, Nishanchu Sen, Zuba said, Zuba de Suba de Koda. Enriching Shanchu Kadichan Togres, you the Nego Kagichan, the Gentena, Shanchu Samadona, Tijena, Togmaro said.
So, what is stated is the Buddha said that cause to enter into the enlightenment to beings in village or the cities or in any other place they may do, then you will not relinquish the spirit of enlightenment. It says that someone who is actually always entering him or herself into the place of bodhicitta. Someone whose mind is already entered into the place of bodhicitta, into the home of bodhicitta, in other words. It will not be distracted regardless of where he or she goes, whether she goes to the cities, whether she goes to the village, or whether she associates with any other beings he or his practice of bodhicitta, cultivation of bodhicitta will not be affected, will not be degenerated, regardless of where he or she do.
Jambe shinku le somba tang kuncho ten le chang shiana tangche de shangchu ji sen jowa dang gewa jishi mo de shangchu ji sen tangwa shena jewa dang jewa shen dang sen rubo che da min jewa ne jeta jeta mo de mi da na she so ji sewa ten do song do do yi long du ne.
So then here's, furthermore, the area of qualities in Manjushi's Buddha realm says that if you have these 4 destructions of pride, elimination of jealousy, elimination of stinginess, and joy when you see the prosperity of others, you do not relinquish your aspirational prayers or the aspirational spirit of enlightenment. Once you cultivate the spirit of enlightenment, you will not be separated from this precious attitude even in future lives, it says. This is stated clearly in the cloud of a jewel sutra, Ratna Maga Sutra of the Ratna Kutta collections. If you train in the spirit of enlightenment in all activities, and if you preface any cultivation of virtue with the spirit of enlightenment, and in the King of Concentration Sutra, as much as people frequently examine, so much will their minds engaged, whatever they are thinking over, and in other sutra as well.
다 nga songe jela ji tongju do so de jela ji joba ji jela ne she mo cha de yana so so abu nga ji men de sen ye nga ji shu chen bo yana ji yin de dang yang to ko sa den zhe la yin zhen sen ta do zhen sen de je yana rang gi ju ben jo la sen na chen ne ni jela ga je ka de ne je ka tang go na ku su ji ni yong wo do a 인터넷 딘지게 메비 토네 네 젠젠 조아 카르 토나 가와다 지스 여랑 첸딩에 치나 아니 스제제 고도라 아니 조발로 소바타가 용시고 마로와스 로아 코가 저이 롱코노 단다코노 저히잖아 다레도아 간사 되게 냐네 쟁에치라 아니 바르긴 조아 통소네 이 가와지다 대거리마도 푸쇼텔라 있는 조바체치야 소바다 네 용고 마로.
So normally there's looking down at others, in other words, looking at others as a lord in oneself, in other words, and having the sense of competitiveness or jealousies and stinginess are all, are all coming into being due to other. You look at other, you become insecure of yourself, and looking at others' position and having a jealousy towards theirs. Or if you see someone who is likely to come and ask you for some help, that you may get annoyed by that because of your stinginess. And you may see someone who is in your position, you're at a level, same level of your positions and so on and so forth. You also have a sense of competitiveness towards those individuals. So instead of that, if you are able to eliminate all those negative thoughts and emotions that we have mentioned earlier, instead, if you see someone who is engaging in practices and who is embarking on the spiritual path, if one generates a great rejoice in their effort of engaging in the practice, and then there will be no possibilities of incurring such negative thoughts in oneself.
되지. 다 집어도 가서 되게 차제래. 아니 다 개정을 소바 가제 소소 쇼케네 로바즈네 존데 네 상주 생각한 생제제 네 되게 교화지 시바지 타요 선제단 조비 상제 고보인 버셔선 쇼케네 코견으로 지저다 상주 생각 소지 따샤와이나 아니 니마치기 개자 통제네 조비 상제기 졸런로 해서나다 된 소바 제메도 괜찮아. 근데 어떻게 타만 홍화대양에 상주 생각이 하나 간다바 나지 화도와이나 장수노를 치기 투바사바 지바레 아니 장소 마세 받아 세가 말에 소야 된대로 상주 세대 통다 바송의 개체 쇼진세네 치심하게 된다 되려도
So therefore, it is very important for us to right from the beginning of our day, from the morning, at the moment that you woke up from the bed, and cultivate these motivations of enlightened motive. In other words, may I be able to establish entire sentient beings to the state of complete enlightenment. And then also one can, dedicate whatever the virtue that one has done, towards the accomplishment of achievement of one's own state of enlightenment, and as well as that of other sentient beings. So it is in the merits that we have accumulated by means of, dedicating in such a way is inconceivable. So, so it is therefore one should always try to, dedicate one's merits. When we were dedicating, one should dedicate by, as that is dedicated by the great bodhisattvas. So it is therefore the bodhicitta is something that is very important from the beginning, important in the middle, important at the end.
되지. 나바데 가서 인지민지 대파 상주생을 빼자고 말해. 소속이 변은 센데기 더 변조로 지라 세타명이 사셔야서나 센데를 도고기 된달라 가냐면 제가 세보세장로. 대나기게 소속이 계속 사상이 주피선 소바질로 로서나 제대기 제벌 피선 소바 연발에 도도 매바로. 인자네 상주생이 끊어지 제소나 저와의 체라 통제도 아니 주대 노셔 여바데 수수자라 소주 노셔 지바레.
So I forgot the earlier translations, sorry. And you also mentioned that if one is able to dedicate one's merits in conjunction with the cultivation of bodhicitta, it is just like a drop of water. It's falling into the oceans. It will remain until the ocean is dried up, right? So here it says not only that we important to dedicate one's cultivation of practice of bodhicitta, but whatever the practice that we may have done, it is important. The one's virtuous practice, one's spiritual practice must be dedicated. It is because just like someone who is accumulated by working so hard and accumulated a wealth, wealth. So this will support oneself in one's livelihood for one's entire lifetime. Similarly, if one is able to dedicate whatever the spiritual practice one may have done towards achievement of one's enlightenment, this will then become an excellent cause for giving rise to the state of enlightenment in the future.
양 가족이 상주기 센세게 되면 자 체다처럼 봐진 로이를 무슨게 소리 지지에 대인 자리 양대지 거바 메비 소리 지다 베데 지 소리 제면도 대 정으로 우주전 소다 라시 되는 소수 되다이나 상주 생각하고도 제일 되다 상주 거고도 세데 시에데 야 현대 주세데 소소 베데 지 남바서는 봐 지유셔 봐 현대 맛이 제비 소리 제일 거야려면도 대화 체니다 대바지 거고여서나 상주 생내신 진 민도아 이 코아나에 대화면 송로 되게 등가족이 고아 야보지 말래나 지 현대지 우주전에서 체계로서 지제서나 아니 소수될 거 붙여 말아.
So, sometimes, we think about this when speaking about the quality of the bodhicitta, right? It is inconceivable. It is something that we cannot be fathomed by ourselves as ordinary beings. Well, in terms of the quality of the bodhicitta. So, however, if one is aspiring to achieve, lasting happiness or everlasting happiness, in other words, the ultimate happiness, then there's no other method. There's no method other than cultivating bodhicitta. His Holiness says, His Holiness often mentioned that when speaking about bodhicitta is cultivated for the welfare of other sentient beings. This is not only that welfare of other sentient beings. If one long to fulfill one's own wishes, the bodhicitta is a method, excellent method for fulfilling one's own wishes. Similarly, if one is aspiring to working for the welfare of other sentient beings, bodhicitta is an excellent means for providing, happiness for other sentient beings. So therefore, whether it is for oneself or others, bodhicitta is the cause, the real or the actual cause which give rise to happiness for self and others.
냐네 시주스 로 마토바 타바시부터 타바 마냐바 somba 아니 냐바 시주바세 아니 다 드리게 담바데 냐소나 아니 시주 간데체네 제고레 하소 간데체네 제고레 세데 somba데레도.
So now we are on the chapter, the method for repairing the spirit of enlightenment if you are weak in it. In other words, if one's bodhicitta has degenerated for some reason, and how we can revitalize this bodhicitta.
되지. 당가서 되진데 담바 가래나 되래 담바들 자동 주소나 자원이네 매버 차도 우리 콜레 냥바 하수제요 말에. 다 자동 많이 버지 양라기네 쥐어 차소나 아니 하수 쥐어야 소에 된다라. 니 시제세래. 저당 자이 동안의 양라기 동안선에 개치시 그래.
So now here, when speaking about the method of repairing the spirit of enlightenment, if you do weaken it, or if it has undergone degenerations. So now here, the one thing that one need to understand when speaking about the repairing or the revitalizing one's declined bodhicitta is, is someone who is bodhicitta, one have undergone the degeneration of the branches of the bodhicitta, the yalagitwa, which means then it is possible for one to repair or revitalize the bodhicitta. However, if one has degenerated, completely degenerated, the root vow of the bodhicitta, then it cannot be revitalized, it cannot be repaired.
되지. 당가서 소다게 담바이나 더래 튀니정가 자손노는 사이 동안 시대 마주나 녀바시 지어야래. 사이 동안 시대 조소나 다 동안 철제 처음에 저어면도 근데 이 시대 조소나 아니 개천으로 담바카리는 담바데 자동도 그러마도 소어야 말이. 이 인지미지 자원이 진거 말어 가서 괜히 담바싱이 뭐 보러 와.
So then here similarly when it comes to the pratimoksha vows, individual liberation vows, such as the novice vows, the vows of lay vows, or the refuge vows, or the vows of the fully ordained vows. And if some the branch of the vows, it has been undergone degenerations, can be restored and revitalized by participating in restoring the ritual of restoring vows and so forth. However, if the individual has degenerated completely the four root vows, then it cannot be revitalized. It is completely destroyed. It is uprooted.
제 당연히 로긴다. 다 도보때 된데는 도주도 지래는 도보도 로긴다. 도주도 지래. 도주 세고이나 가제 라리 첸던의 시에디 코 노와 소바도 소자도 처음에 다 도주된다. 나비 취지 가서 somba nyana shi jubi tsula asa nabi chu jeta senchen lo pa da nga nye sanje juba mine nyane senche towa ta chula tunse de na pense ton la tunse je na to jobe he na nyambi junji shi le tru lemba ta choni la toba nyana nyamba sanje je yimbe tongji shuna pensen lembi choka la sa nyangju shungwa zane choka jab mi gobe shabe dago xie mambu teke de ma wo sondo jen jen deba le sondo.
Yes, sir. So the many scholar states, here the many scholar states the following view. You relinquish the aspirational spirit of enlightenment if a certain period passed and there there are the four dark practices together with the fifth mentally abandoning living beings, or a sixth casting aside the spirit of enlightenment by thinking I cannot accomplish Buddhahood. However, if within the period of time you regret the sixth and they weaken the aspirational spirit of enlightenment, but do not cause you to abandon it. And if you fail to adopt the spirit of enlightenment 6 times each day and allow your training in the collections of the collections to degenerate, it only weakens the spirit of enlightenment. If a cause of relinquishing occurs, you must repeat it. Repeat the ritual for adopting the spiritual spirit of enlightenment. But for the mere weakening, you do not have to repeat it, making a confession a surface.
야. 그래서 대대 다텔라 그 가용이 같이 또 가마데 같이 된다고 제제. 아니 대라사 nye sanje drupa muni nyane senchi yana delane demata to tonge tunse la tene mugobe namba tanche de mete to sondo.
So I think I overread this one. So here it says, I cannot accomplish Buddhahood, going back to that. However, if within a period of time you regret that six, they weaken the aspirational spirit of enlightenment, but do not cause you to abandon it.
되게 된다 때 디가노로라 가서라 나이 노래 지텔라 아니 내 상제 주민이 소와세기 로지잖아 근데 냥바 차거를 센도가 아니 될라 가서 뒤세 변나 뒤세세디 팀선세디라데 변나 가서 결론도 된대로와 변나 추거든 제네 동안데 지제고야나 아니 대리내서 선이 아니 쇼게기 짜리 니마이 때 여더버데 좀바도 포소나 아니 되네 아니 동안데 제비 창선을 지어라 대나기게 거기 선제로 동소나 뒤세 드르지해서나 아니 콜라 가서 상추세냐게 동안데 차그래 뒤 팀사대 마게나 연조 저바자소나 아니 고통한테 매고 차그래 세니 개체때 태그 말해스 아니 예 선제 루트사 말해서 어디 거기 제바 더하는 상추세 동그래 마도 아니 열 팀사 구고 말해 손도아.
So here,
the guy
that's all. The other scholars stated that, when it comes to the degeneration of one's bodhicitta, the bodhisattva's vow, it says there is a certain period that you might say that I cannot accomplish Buddhahood. It says that I cannot accomplish Buddhahood. However, if within the period of time you regret this six, they weaken the spiritual spirit of enlightenment, but do not cause to abandon it. And if so, that's what it says, is that there's a certain period where the degeneration occur, degeneration incur, certain period of time. It is others, view. Just like, he is actually, taking an example of the fully ordained vows. those who have ordained monks, in other words, fully ordained bhikshus, if they remain themselves, separated from their yellow garment, choge, yellow garment for a night, and until the until the sunrise, then he or she is degenerating their vows. However, such bhikshu is not, and they remembered their his or her, the yellow garment is left at home, and with before the sunrise, it's go back and get that and becoming it in your position, then your vow will not be degenerated. So this similar reason is applied to the bodhisattvas, but however, it's not right. In other words, it says at the moment that you have a generation of saying, you have generated a mind that I cannot accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of other beings, you have already degenerated your vow. It doesn't need to be a certain period. It doesn't need to be a certain time.
就是国的量，19岁的军电子学那个做就业把这国国了，早年的面不恰算的做就业给没有啊，别那想去给生来的个生产堂阶段的做别上阶功夫，特别接近一些当家的了啊，但当家的学生呢，早年的学生的或许就这个等于可能没有啊。
So it is just like you are actually completely destroying the foundation upon which the bodhicitta, the practice is built, right? Because I must engage in the practice to gain the state of enlightenment for the benefit of other sentient beings. This is the actual motive of cultivating bodhicittas. If you are lacking these motivations, how can one restore the bodhisattva's vow?
对这，但可以让的让比较懦弱了，拿去些的下送啊，但对拿去些的没特别坚持的，对吧？那比去些呢，测的三阶等于就面积，交人的三阶我的面积与就因为测的我把人的送的，当中嘞，那呢交人的交人的真都。这个是别老板用是送写送的的，这个写吧呢，越送就来得是梦的，越送就写吧嘞，这个写吧我送的。
So, with respect to this, if you should think, I cannot accomplish Buddhahood, you immediately abandon the spirit of enlightenment. It is never necessary to rely on the passage of the certain period of time. So, such as assertion is absolutely incorrect. The 4 dark practices are not the cause of relinquishing the spirit of enlightenment in this life, but are cause for not manifesting the spirit of enlightenment in the future lives. So we should stop them in this life. The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment says, in order to remember the spirit of enlightenment, even in the future lives, maintain the training that have been explained.
对，对我是过来都过的，那边去些的，你叫我姐嘛呢，上去噻，我都军队的那把啦，拿去就把的帮过的，搞些就把娘来结果送的嘛都，现在我都就说那上去噻，娘个的噻呢，别想那送也嘛的送的，可当嘛的个娘把学就是的，现在让了过两个的嘛都，叫什么娘把学觉得给这过两斤的嘛的哇，现在的太我们都已经在的。
So, it is, what is saying here is very clear, right? With respect to this, if you should think, I cannot accomplish, a state of enlightenment, you immediately abandon the spirit of enlightenment. It is never necessary to rely on the passage of the certain period of time, right? So, such an assertion is absolutely incorrect. What is from our own side? That is not a right, assertion. The 4 dark practices are not the cause of relinquishing the spirit of enlightenment in this life, but are cause for not manifesting the spirit of enlightenment in the future lives. So one should stop them in this life.
朗中有路的，叫我第一娘被给什么的，叫我 단지 이게 되죠. 상주기 생체와 제마트스 준티는 네발 거세. 다지 처음부터 된제 좀 시송대에서 지게시비요 송지 시변에 시발에 지게시하고 도 되니제 되야 되는데 여송 상주 삼바 취지다 덴바 요 탕제의 제마타도 상주지 생活도觉得 상주지 님보라 두개 봐도 만도 만도 제바 민저로 셰까지 지이코스 세와 손베 나치 지이코스 첸데 세카 매장 시명원의 셰바 셰소 손도 돼.
So here now, to maintain the trainings that have been explained, means explained in the Kasyapa's chapter. This is what the sutra means, because it clearly says this. It clearly says this in the context of the four light practices. And Kasyapa, the bodhisattvas who possess the four practices, will manifest the spirit of enlightenment in all lives immediately after being born, and will not cast it aside or forget it until they reach the heart of enlightenment. So, although it is not stated clearly in the context of the four dark practices, whether they affect this life or future, this life or the future lives, understand that it is the latter. Still, you resort to dark practice in this life, your spirit of enlightenment will weaken. Otherwise, if bodhisattvas who are keeping their vows just like a bit as a joke, then deceive others and misrepresents themselves to them into a trifling way. So say something slightly bad about bodhisattvas out of anger, or just engender slight regret in others with respect to their cultivation of the virtuous root. And if they pass a period of time without feeling regret, then they would lose their bodhisattva's vow.
도대게 까치 주보데 저와 제만에 상주 세면양 바이보데 시보 송요데 아니 나치 주보데 저와 제만 임바데 시보 시로 그래야세 데레도 된다.
So for what this particular passage of the sutra is stated is now, just as the declination of one's bodhisattva's vow by means of engaging in the practice of the three dark practices. Similarly, the three white practices are also applied to our future lives, the bodhisattva's vow, not preventing from degeneration of the future life. Bodhisattva's vow, sorry.
연장 첸대양사 나추 나대나 센제 투촌도로 저로 대다마이나 상추 상센제 담덴지 세계지신야 전조제 마와당 센제라 요지 존제 지바당 센제라 말 상세라 셰다게 년화 존제 저바당 젠제게 자샤와라 저바 존제 잖아 저바 메베 튼순데나 샤세제 담바동 제데 대다게 면세동라사 면세동나 담바동 샤사다 로디니가네 손비 쇼로 손도
게 로사자지
알레 로사 다다레 대가지 대다지 바레 저랑 대가 로사나 아야 대바도 로사나 당연히 대자나 저기 손친도 다다지 그래 아니 대다되어나세 다자저자
맞아
대다되어나네세 대바 다자 아니 제다 대다 다가랑로와 저바저바다겨 드르 상기 다다가서게 나치 나비 취제된 것도 저바 상제 아니 센들 상주세 동고 말에 손도 말에 영어 말에 손도 다이나 처음 다 알레 처음 데레 간데 대자기
그래서
아니게 손에 이렇게 저 이제 제마들 이렇게 저 생에 되면 이게 차도 있게 잘 참아서 처음은 대체 아니 당아서 단다 벌어서 다 나비 취지를 무엇도 주의하면现在 같이 당아서 레로的 형용직이 홍게 아니 다 제가 상에 단다 받을 하도록 아니잖아요 다 상주기 산다 상주 선비 연대다 상주 생이 아니 제이스에서 간다 차거래서 라지 선대다 제이스라 자 아니 라니 니 자와차네 네 라지 선제단지니 다 제세 제진에니 선제살래 취해 아니 소소게 뭐네 소소래 니바 찬스도 예전에 니바데 촐라모도나 당연히 니바데 주인다 하잖아 상주선의 상주선발에 아가 보체 아니 된저게 지 카메라다 되는 거 빠도 주인의 상이 인노로 소야 보체 아니 대체 도바대야 지 장자라 지 년에 제비 걸어 바체 되는 거 아니 되는 쇼비게 나마고 지 상대나라 소하다 아니 지 소사 대장데 전에 근데 전에는 상제 살람 로토 지전에 제게 인세 지 치담에 라네도 아니 되려지에는 쇼용화 쇼선에 라지 선제 다자 나와도 하나님과 잖아
So we will go through the explanation of this particular, paragraphs during, our next teachings. And now let's do our dedications. So without procrastinating one's practice, may I engage in bodhicitta, the practice of the bodhisattvas, and and cultivating the qualities of the bodhisattva within one's continuum, and have a genuine aspiration to become oneself as a child of victorious ones, and a child of Buddha, in other words, and as a children of the Buddha, and having oneself enter into the Bodhisattva's path, and one gained the state of enlightenment. And very purpose of gaining the state of enlightenment for oneself is to lead all sentient beings to become a Buddha's child, or Buddha's children. So, may I will do my best to be able to engage in such a practice to cultivate bodhicitta in my lifetime. And if there might be obstacles, if there are some obstacles when one is engaging in such practice, so one should pray to the Buddhas in the 10 directions by all those impediments and obstacles be removed, and by having a strong determination to engage in the practice of accumulation of merits and accumulation of wisdom, and not only by just a word, but I will do so. As I'm instructed, I will engage in the practice for the benefit of all other sentient beings.
Dogen Jeni Sabi Gewa De Dong Zhuwa Kyuna Kangben Jeba Jizhen Lo San Zhaba Denbi Nyingbo Ren Le Jie Shu Sa Jin Bu Jin Shu Jin Men Du Zhang Re Zhou Lin Jie Nian De Jian Ba De San Jie Xin Du Min De Bi Wa Yi 若根能得心了学波学，教我更多养大了嘛。人民去这别了龙学经，所当浪就有点绕着呢，多就强给国王女多学，一当个这这。 明知那个那样那样面，天天人都别来做年。 可到阳光光节撒巴的，农民马的给当着玩呢，南镇家业红包大酒气，天马身边再绕更多样，江边养着这边结庄的，天边人把更长浪接住，年年周边接到年些数。 Rangi Chijin Dogi Nangjani, Shuda Tsewe Changye Dagi, Roye Yeje Minba Secheni, Jaye Tenba Yunin Zinjuji, Rangbo Renjin Choge Majaba, Chojan Nyamba Jubi Shudeni, Nije Chimbu Yiro Chobayi, Dede Dede Sewa Sheba Shu, Sejin Jaye Minjong Chinde, Ledu Shangju Langju Rinpe Jang, Tande Nangju Yilan Pede Jaye Zeba Rindu Chongju Chi, Langzang Zhubi Tunjin Zhuxi Chi, Gejin Sije Madang Miming, Cero Gundo Jaye Mabaye, Nada Nada Rewa Majuji, Kanse Deba Chola Chuchuji, Zijin Zhula Zumba Debi, Tuden Nangzhe Dadu Chuxi, Zhaxi Jiangzi Shu Yu Ju Ji, Yuzan Lamin Kuse Rodi, Nanga Chende Shuju Jeba Dang, Lozang Denbi Zhume Sasong Ji, Roye Minse Dadu Nenju Ji, Gangzhe Rawe Hui, Jinggang Su, Pindang Dewa Ma Lin Zhongye, 现在人王电子叫做小别身体保度电究节，两边保育知道情报，更多上报电样电见的，得到根据接受道路去，给我得到当地劳动，就从西边叫我当地去。 我看了出的我的，大仙给月早晚的跟讲，从不是劳动。哎呀，
Thank you.
哎呀，我多谢。
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you.